Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Endgame. We're here to talk about ADP for 2021 Fantasy Football season. And we've already talked about our favorite pick for every round. And now we're going to give you the biggest bust in every round. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't mean we're saying all these players are guys you just absolutely need to avoid, that they're going to be bust this year. We're just saying that they aren't worth where they're being drafted. All right, we're basing this off of ESPN's preseason ADP, or as they say, live draft results for a 10-team league. So let's get started in round one. I mean, Chris, it's hard to say any of these top 10 guys are going to be bust, but if you had to pick one, who do you think it is?
Yeah, I'm ready for the comments. Bring them on. But it's Derrick Henry. And look, it's not that I think Derrick Henry is going to be bad, and it's not that I think Derrick Henry is going to get hurt. It's the fact that last year he ran for 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns, and he finished as the running back 3. And now you're going to draft him as the running back 3. Sounds like you're drafting him at his absolute ceiling. I mean, this guy, and that was with no McCaffrey and no Barkley. So, this guy, again, I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be great. I just feel like you're drafting him at his absolute maximum ceiling. So, yeah, not necessarily a bust, just going a little too high.
I'm just going to say ditto to everything you said. There's nobody who I feel is an absolute landmine in round one, somebody you have to avoid. It's got to be Henry for me too, for everything that you just laid out. So let's move it along, go to round two. Who is it that you think maybe a ADP bust at this range?
Yeah, it's another running back, and this time it's Nick Chubb. And here's why. Again, people are, Nick Chubb, he's so safe. Well, he's really not. If you look at the last 2 years, he has less 20-point PPR games than Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler, who's being drafted before him, or after him, excuse me. And when you look at 14 games with 14 or more points, he also has less than those guys. In fact, he's only scored 14 or more points in barely half his games. So he's not as safe as we all think, and he doesn't have that massive upside either. He's just kind of a okay guy. And for me, an okay guy isn't good enough in the early second round. So passing on Nick Chubb every time.
I agree with everything you said. I'm also not getting a lot of Chubb this year, just because I get it. He's kind of a safe pick, if you will. He does have those big games, but I just don't think the upside is there like some of those other running backs you can get later than him. So I agree with that. But for me, the biggest bust, and I know there's going to be a lot of heat based on what I'm about to say, but Pat Mahomes. I get it. I get that he is the guy who is the best quarterback arguably in the league, might be the best fantasy quarterback in the league. He also might not, because guess what? Last year, he wasn't. It was Josh Allen who had the most fantasy points at quarterback. The year before, it wasn't. It was Lamar Jackson. Okay, so I'm not saying that he will or won't be the top fantasy quarterback. I'm saying you don't need to draft a quarterback in the second round. There will be someone who will outscore Pat Mahomes most likely, and there are plenty of quarterbacks who are going to get really close to his level of scoring several rounds later. Like, you don't have to have the best quarterback. That's typically not what wins you your league. And if it is, it's because you drafted him a lot later, not because you spend a second round pick on a quarterback. So there's just no need to have Pat Mahomes. It might make you feel good on draft day that you got him. It's not going to make you feel good when you don't win the championship. All right, on to round three.
Yeah, I'm going with the quarterback as well, and that's Josh Allen. And this is kind of like the Derrick Henry thing. I don't think Josh Allen's going to be bad. In fact, I think he'll be great. But not third round great. Not when you're passing on some of these stud players at other positions. The reason why Josh Allen won leagues last year was because he was going in the 7th, 8th, 9th round of drafts, not the third. So kind of like what you said with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen just going too high this year to really be a difference maker or a league winner.
Exactly. Same thing. You don't need to draft a quarterback early, period. Now, here's another Chief. All right. So I promise I'm not a Chiefs hater. I'm just telling you that because of the fact that they are, technically not the best team because they didn't win the Super Bowl last year, but one of the best teams, best offenses in the league. Look, I get we want a piece of that offense, but you don't have to just for the sake of having it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not going to be the guy running back. He wasn't last year. What's different? Like, what was it last year? Was he hurt during the year? No, he wasn't. Was there another guy who came in at running back? No, there wasn't. Like, nothing will change. Why do we all of a sudden think he'll be the RB1 when he won't? So at least he's being drafted later than he was last year. I'm trying to warn everybody away from spending a first round or second round pick on him last year. Last year, he was clearly my biggest bust in the early rounds. He still is. Even in round 3, I feel like you can do better. All right, round 4, hit me up.
Yeah, back to running backs, and this time it's J.K. Dobbins. I know a lot of people love this guy. He's a good running back, I agree, but he's on an offense where he's only going to see 12 to 15 carries a week. He's not going to catch any passes at all. And the Ravens may throw the ball more, which will not be good for him. And we just heard from a beat writer who said they might give Gus Edwards more goal line touches this year. None of that paints a good picture for J.K. Dobbins, especially in a PPR league when he's not going to catch many passes. So definitely not drafting him here in the 4th round.
Going to go with running back 2. Look, a lot of these running backs who get taken way early, it's because we get mesmerized by the highlights and the potential, and you have to look at the numbers. How are they used? What is their upside on a weekly basis? So don't get carried away by Miles Sanders when he breaks off these 80-yard runs. That doesn't happen every week. There are some games we like to forget conveniently that he got 13 yards on 12 carries. Okay, and likewise with Dobbins, Sanders is going to have less of a role this year. They have already come out and said this. They're going to be incorporating other running backs. They drafted Kenneth Gainwell. They still got Boston Scott around. Sanders is not going to be anything close to a workhorse. He's also a guy who doesn't catch a ton of passes. So I just feel like, you know what, you're overpaying for a guy who will have some boom weeks here and there, but it's just not going to be a reliable source of points. All right, let's keep it going. We're on round 5.
Yeah, well, I'm done picking on running backs now. Let's pick on a wide receiver, and it's Julio Jones, who, look, he's a great wide receiver, but his situation has gotten significantly worse. He's gone from a team that threw the ball over 600 times to a team that threw the ball less than 500 times. He's gone from a team where he was the alpha number 1 wide receiver to a team with an alpha number 1 wide receiver. I think Julio Jones will be okay this year, but that's it. I think he'll just be okay and not worth a top 5 pick. So, sorry, love Julio Jones, one of the best receivers of all time, but not going to get it done for you in the 5th round.
All right, well, I'm done with the running backs at this point, too. I'm going to talk about a tight end. That's Mark Andrews. Could be a top 5 tight end, but it's not guaranteed. I know that we like to kind of lump him in that top tier of players at the position, but talk about the Ravens offense. They might pass it more, but that's because they got more actual wide receivers. That's never a good thing for the tight end. He's been kind of the main target there just because they're always short on talent at receiver. They tried drafting some rookies last year, didn't all pan out. They got Rashad Bateman, who I absolutely love, and I think that Lamar Jackson is going to love, and Tyler Wallace, and they got Sammy Watkins. You know what? Andrews is going to see his target share probably decrease a little bit, and I just don't think he's worth the draft capital at this point. You might as well wait on tight end. All right, keep it moving. Round 6.
Another wide receiver, and this time I'm going from a veteran to a rookie, and that's Jamar Chase in Cincinnati. You know, everybody loved this guy coming in the draft, but we're not hearing good things about him right now as far as adjusting to the NFL game. You know, it makes sense. This guy last played football in 2019. Now he's trying to come out on an NFL football field and make it work. Look, I think he'll get better as the season goes on, but there's going to be a lot of struggles early on, and he's competing with 2 other very good wide receivers in T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Oh, and Joe Burrow has no offensive line, so he's going to be under pressure. I think it's going to be a down year for Jamar Chase, and everybody drafting him is going to be disappointed.
I mean, love Chase and Dynasty, but redraft, I'm actually not touching him, honestly. So I definitely agree with you there. I'm going to go with a guy who has become a little bit trendier. I'm glad that people aren't necessarily overpaying for him, but still, Darrell Henderson. People think that he could be what Cam Akers looked like he was going to be. We've already seen Darrell Henderson and what he can do, and it's fine at times. But clearly, the Rams drafted Cam Akers for a reason. We never saw Henderson become a bell cow in LA. Akers was on his way. He could have been that, but there's a reason why it seems like they don't trust Henderson to be the guy there. So even though they haven't gone out and signed a free agent, I still think they will. But even besides that, I just don't feel like Henderson is going to be a guy who gets 20 plus touches a game. He is not a bad pick. I'm telling you, this is one that it was kind of tough for me here. There wasn't a lot of guys I really thought were big busts. So I don't mind taking Henderson at this point. But again, I feel like I'd much rather have him later on in the draft. All right, let's keep rolling. We are now in round 7, I believe.
Yes. And I know you get to round 7 and you see Michael Thomas, wide receiver, Saints, and you think, how can I not draft Michael Thomas? Well, I'm telling you right now, don't draft Michael Thomas. It's bad enough that this guy didn't do what he needed to do for his ankle and had to have surgery in June. Now we hear that he wasn't even returning the Saints' phone calls for 3 months. This is not a good situation between Michael Thomas and the Saints. Don't expect to see Michael Thomas on a football field at all in 2021. Stop wasting a pick, especially a top 7 pick, on Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I've got to think that ADP is going to fall, but still, we've seen it. We've been doing these mock drafts, 3 times a week, and we always see somebody holding that hope and saying, oh, it's a great value. I'll get Michael Thomas here. That's just a wasted pick at this point. Even if you told me, Chris, that he was coming back in week 10 or week 11, I still wouldn't touch him because he's not going to be healthy. We saw this. We were warning people against drafting Deebo Samuel last year, and you see how that turned out. He had, 2 good games, and otherwise it was a wasted pick. All right, but my pick here, a guy who's also banged up, not nearly as badly, but Kenny Golladay. Look, that's the last thing we needed, that there was some health issues. There was health issues all last year, kind of a wasted season. Going to the Giants with Daniel Jones as your quarterback instead of Matt Stafford was already reason to worry, and all the competition for targets with the receivers there and Saquon Barkley coming back. I mean, how many red flags do we need waving in front of us before we just avoid Kenny Golladay? He's a very talented player. He's just in a terrible situation, and he's not healthy. There's no way I am picking Kenny Golladay, regardless of what round he's going in. So clear avoid for me. All right, let's go to round 8. Who do you think is the biggest bust in this area?
Yeah, speaking of a terrible situation, it's Robbie Anderson. Look, had a really nice season last year. I think he's a really good player. But he's going from Teddy Bridgewater to Sam Darnold. And a lot of people think that that's okay, but I don't. I think that's a downgrade. And let's not forget, he's competing still with DJ Moore, and they drafted Terrace Marshall. Oh, and Christian McCaffrey will likely be healthy this year too. So it's almost impossible that he's going to replicate the season he had last year. And if Darnold is who he was with the Jets, this whole passing game is going to be terrible. So I'm not willing to take that risk, and I'm staying away from this Carolina Panthers passing game.
All right. I don't mind Robbie Anderson too much, but I get that there's a lot of unknowns, different look there to that offense. Likewise, in Washington, going to be a different look. Like, everybody is all over Logan Thomas. That's a great story and everything. But what happens when a tight end comes out of nowhere to get a bunch of targets? It's because there was really nobody else to throw to. Well, now Washington has Curtis Samuel to throw to. Antonio Gibson is coming on, going to be more involved at receiver. Let's not forget, different quarterback. We have Ryan Fitzpatrick, a guy who's not known for dumping it off or throwing to the tight end. He's going to want to throw it deep. He's going to throw it to his wideouts. That's what he prefers to do. So I don't see Logan Thomas being really an integral part of that passing attack. He'll be fine, but I can't guarantee he'll be a top 10 tight end, and he's definitely not worth taking this early. You can do better. All right, on to round 9.
Yeah, I'm also going with a tight end, and it's Robert Tonyan. And I know people are like, well, Aaron Rodgers is back, so he'll be fine. Sure, if you believe he can catch 11 touchdowns on 50 passes again like he did last year, which is completely ridiculous and unsustainable. And if you take out, I think it was week 3 or week 4, where Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones were both out that game, he caught 3 touchdowns in that game. If you take out that game, he goes from tight end 4 to tight end 14, right? So he doesn't need a huge loss of touchdowns to drop significantly as far as position goes. No way I'm drafting Robert Tonyan, even with Aaron Rodgers back.
I'm on board with that decision. Probably no tight ends you really want to draft in this range specifically. Now, I'll talk about a receiver here that I'm kind of backing off on. I really thought DJ Chark would be the one in Jacksonville, but we're hearing that Urban Meyer isn't crazy about him, and now he's having some injury issues too. He's talking about putting on weight. I mean, there's just a lot of question marks surrounding him. And if you saw our players that we love in each round, our best picks, I'm all over Laviska Shenault, which means I'm backing off DJ Chark. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a bust, but there is bust potential here. And this is a receiver I don't feel great about. All right, last but not least, let's go to round 10. We're going to talk about the first 10 rounds here. So who do you feel at this range is going to be the biggest bust?
Yeah, one more wide receiver, and it's Michael Gallup of the Cowboys. I don't get it. Look, I know with Dak Prescott, you want a piece of this offense, but it's very rare that an offense supports 3 good fantasy wide receivers. And when you look at the games with Dak Prescott last year, there was only one game where Michael Gallup really had a nice game. The rest of the games were not very good. You got CeeDee Lamb, you got Amari Cooper, You got Zeke out of the backfield. I just don't see how Gallup pays off this year. I think you can do better in the 10th round.
All right, and then I'll just say by this point, we do see in the ESPN ADP, there's people taking defenses and kickers. You don't need, just don't, okay? But when we talk about busts, well, it's got to be Leonard Fournette. To me, this is a no-brainer. Leonard Fournette is a guy who's never been reliable. I mean, we talk about off-the-field issues. He's still at it, right? He's still doing everything possible to get into the doghouse. And Bruce Arians has a pretty big doghouse. There's room for a lot of people in there. I don't feel good about his position on the roster. I don't feel good about his target share in terms of market share of carries. I don't feel good about anything regarding Leonard Fournette. He also has, injury problems. So I'm going to avoid. There's plenty of other guys I'd take a chance on at this range instead of Fournette. All right, so those are our top busts in each and every round. Go ahead and let us have it. Who do you completely disagree with? Who do you think you'd have in there instead? Let us know. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. All right, thanks for watching.